Welcome to the EW Reunion's United at Home series, where we're hoping to bring a little bit of relief into your homes during these complicated times and also raise some funds for several COVID-19 related efforts. This week is a celebration of the iconic soap opera, All My Children. We've brought so many members of the cast together, and they've chosen to support Feeding America, which is putting food on the tables of families and those affected by the pandemic across the country. If you're able to donate, please visit ew.com/allmychildrenreunion. And now sit back and enjoy our return to Pine Valley.
The following program,
modern style.
From 1970 to 2011, All My Children was one of the most beloved soap operas on television, with 41 seasons, 10,712 episodes, and 360 Emmy nominations. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more successful or iconic show. Welcome to the Entertainment Weekly cast reunion of All My Children. I'm Senior TV Editor Jared Hall, and joining us today, Melissa Claire Egan as the lovable but unstable Annie Lavery, Cameron Mathison as the beloved leading man Ryan Lavery, Rebecca Budig as the bad girl with a heart of gold Greenlee Smythe,
Hello.
Josh Duhamel as Greenlee's first love, Leo Dupre. Chrishell Stause as the girl who was looking for love in all the wrong places until she found the right place, Amanda Dillon. And Ricky Paull Goldin as the dashing doc, Jake Martin. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Yeah, how's it feel?
Thank you
for all
for
of you
arranging this.
No, of course.
Thank you for arranging all this. This is so cool.
I can't
cool.
take all the credit, but we're very happy to have all of you. How's it feel to be reunited in a time of virtual reunions?
I love it. I think it's cool. I love seeing everybody's face. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
can't believe I got my phone to work.
Here. I don't like anybody. I'm very disappointed with your cast selections.
Cameron, every time Cameron and I talk, we always talk about how these were probably the best years of our life, you know?
Hearing that from a lot of people.
Like living
certainly
in New
for
York
sure.
and
Yeah.
I don't know, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it certainly seems from talking to everyone, it was kind of certainly magic for lots of folks. I want to go back to the very beginning for all of you and ask about your audition process. Rebecca, is there anything specific you remember about yours to kick us off?
I actually didn't audition because I had auditioned for some other part 3 years before, but ended up getting Guiding Light before I got All My Children. And then they just called and said, could you come on and do a couple weeks? Like a little, small little role for, I don't know, maybe it was like a couple months or something like that. And then it just sort of, and then Josh came on.
Yes, Josh, how about your audition? This was your first job, right?
Yes, it was sort of my first job. My first job was actually this independent student film that I had done in Bulgaria that hopefully nobody's ever seen.
I loved you because you had genius.
It had a XXX rating. I don't know if that
Practically, I was in a it was a remake of the Picture of Dorian Gray. It was weird.
I have a copy of that.
I'm Googling this right now.
Goes through Google.
We're going to watch that tonight.
The best part about it is that we sold it as me doing a major motion picture. So they like that. They thought they were, this guy's doing movies. We should hire him for the show. Meanwhile, it's something that nobody should ever see. So I got very lucky. It was like Rebecca said, 3 of the best years of my life. I had so much fun in New York City and making all the friends. Cam and I still, talk and hang out quite a bit. And, it was just one of those things that you'll never forget.
And your first scene, I just found this book, was with Elizabeth Banks. Is that right?
It was.
Hi.
Good morning, Rosalie.
I still remember the first line.
Oh, really?
I said, good morning, Rosalie. Breakfast was so good, I thought I'd come back for lunch.
The meal and the company were so charming the other day, I thought I'd see what your breakfasts were like.
That's it.
It's amazing.
That's it. Because she gave me free breakfast, so I came back for a free lunch as well.
And how was everything?
Excellent, Rosalie.
Compliments to the chef?
Ma certo.
Ooh, love the way Italian sounds.
Ma belle Rosalie.
Dessert?
Well, that's really up to you.
Cameron, what do you recall about your audition?
My first audition is a crazy story in the sense that I was living in Toronto, trying to work as an actor up there, and I literally was visiting friends in New York City and wanted to write off my trip to New York City. So I went to see an acting agency. They said, hey, you know what? You got a good look. We're good friends with this woman named Judy Wilson over at All My Children. Go and say hi and meet her. This is like a weekend with my buddies. And I'm like, all right, sure. I'll walk in there with no intention. You know, sometimes that's really helpful when when you have very low expectations. I wasn't thinking anything of it. I was just trying to get a write-off out of this trip. And Judy was as sweet as she's always been. And she said, you know what? Take this scene, take 5 minutes, put yourself on tape, do a cold read for me. I went in the other room, did a cold read. She put me on tape. I thought nothing of it. On my way out, I passed by the executive producer at the time, and Judy introduced me, and that was it. Next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I get a screen test. I fly down to New York, and it changed my life. So pretty fortunate circumstances. Yeah.
Wow. Melissa, may I call you Missy? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
sure.
What do you recall about your audition?
I auditioned. I was living in LA at the time, working at as a hostess at a restaurant on Sunset, and I auditioned on tape. And then they flew me to New York to screen test with Cameron. I watched All My Children growing up, so I was really excited and very overwhelmed in those hallways and seeing these people and these photos on the wall. Cameron was tough. He was not friendly. Yeah. He's not a really friendly guy. No, and he was the best. And I do remember feeling like, usually as an actor, you always, or at least me, I'm always like, oh, I was terrible. But this screen test, like I remember feeling like it went well. And then a couple of days later, they called me and told me I got the part. And it's same like what Rebecca said. It was just like a dream come true, especially, to be in that opening, like the like with the pictures falling. Like I watched that growing up, so it was so surreal and like such a gift.
Chrishell, when you were going in for Amanda, did you know that she was going to be the daughter of an All My Children legend of Janet, often sometimes referred to as Janet from Another Planet because of her antics?
No, they actually kept that a secret from us. I screen tested as Sydney Fox. So I had no idea who the character was, which is probably good because she was this innocent blonde girl that I looked nothing like. So I think that would have messed with my head because there were girls that would have looked more like what she would have grown up to look like screen testing with me. And I attribute getting the job to the fact that I would have never in a million years guessed that this would be the first part that I would book, because I'd already gotten close to a couple commercials and I didn't get the job. And I grew up wanting to be on a soap. I would watch the shows and be like, oh my God, they're so glamorous. I want to do that. So I was just thinking like, there's no way I'm going to get a gig, a 4-year contract on a soap opera, like my dream job. So I was so relaxed. It was the first audition. My hands weren't shaking. My voice wasn't trembling. And I was like, oh, I'm just so excited to be here. And I just had so much fun with it. So and then that worked in my favor, I guess.
And Ricky, take me back to the beginning and those auditions, landing the role. What do you remember?
Oh, mine was a little kind of a timing thing, a weird thing. I was doing Guiding Light at the time, and I was called in to meet the brass. Brian Cameron knows all these people. Brian, what's Brian's last name?
Brian Franz. Yeah.
Franz, yes. And I just remember going to his big office, and it had pictures of all the stars of All My Children on the walls, and there's Susan Lucci and all of you guys. And I thought, like, our office doesn't do that for Guiding Light. We don't, you're lucky that if you have a passport size photo in their office, nobody cared. And I was like, I'll never, this is the ranks of these guys. This is a big show. This is a big ABC owned show and all that. So Brian, I couldn't tell. He was like a poker face guy. And he just sat me down and said, what if you came over? I mean, if you were to do a show on ABC, I said, oh, are you asking me if I would? Yeah, I would love that. I'd like to stay in New York, and All My Children happen to be in New York. And I'd always see you guys in the cast walking around the Upper West Side, see Cameron all the time. And I just remember thinking, everybody's so tall, Josh. Everyone's so tall. I'll never be asked to be on this show because I remember thinking that. That was my inner monologue, as stupid as that is. My contract was ending, up for renewal, whatever. But I just much I always wanted to be on an ABC show. That was what I wanted, and it was a dream for me. It was a dream come true too. And everybody was really pretty nice to me, except for Cameron when I came over.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very tough.
I wanted to start with Cameron for this question, and then the rest of you can jump in. When did you first realize your character was a hit with fans of the show?
Before I got there.
Or is there like a memorable, you know, an interaction that was like, oh, they know me, they know this guy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess there was like, you know, I think one of the unique things about people that watch soaps is they're like a super devoted audience, right? It's almost like this bubble of television, this medium that people are all in. Like it's an all-in experience that you don't normally get. So I think I was new on the show, and I was dating somebody in New York City, and I was at I was at like a department store in New York, and the escalators were going up from the main floor of this department store, and there was a woman going up the escalator, and I'm down here with my girlfriend, and she yells out, "Ryan!" like top of her lungs, like it's like the whole place shut down, and they all eyes and turn, and she's kind of like going up the escalator. And at the time, I was in a rape storyline, and she yells out, "I'm so happy they let you out of jail. I knew you didn't rape her." And I'm like,
that's great.
And honestly, in that moment, you know that these people are so bought in on the storylines, and my character obviously was a big part of her life. And my girlfriend left me after that, and you know.
I remember one time in New York, there was a Polaroid that was taken the first time anybody, some guy, we were walking Upper West Side somewhere, and somebody asked me for a photo, and I was like, oh my God. And I was with my buddies were in town, and we all couldn't believe that, oh my God, somebody recognized you from the show. And I will never forget, that was the first time that that I got any sort of, you know, recognition from playing Leo on All My Children.
I just remember walking down the street in New York and having people like, "Greenlee, you're so bad," things like that, and feeling like, oh my God, that's so, you know, you're in New York and this like, you know, huge city, and there's people that are recognizing you.
I was on an airplane, and I played, you know, Dr. Jake Martin, and somebody in the plane was maybe having a heart attack, and the announcement came on the plane, if there's a doctor, can you know, help? So the flight attendant said, "Listen, I don't know, but I know you know a lot of medical stuff, Dr. Jake. Would you want to, is there any chance?" And I had a girlfriend at the time on the plane, and I look at her and I go, I think I could. And she goes, "If you do that, I'm not with you anymore. I can't." So I thought, well, if that guy up in the air knows that, you know, knows my character, I thought this is a good sign.
Well, you guys, I want to talk about some soap opera love triangles that sometimes turn into squares and hexagons, but you know, a lot of them are so legendary. And Missy and Cameron, I want to talk about Ryan and Annie. Take us back to when you first started working together, and the fan reaction to that, because that obviously drives and motivates a lot sometimes.
Go ahead, Missy.
You know, well, when I started, everyone thought I was like a secret Greenlee, because they thought I was, because Rebecca had just left, and they were obsessed with her and their characters being together. So they took a minute to warm up to me, kind of, didn't they? I mean, and I think and then they were all like, "It's not really Annie. Annie's really Greenlee." And I was like, well, how does that make any sense? But okay, it is a soap opera. But yeah, I mean, I feel so lucky that I got to work with Cameron. We had so much fun. Like, I always tell the stories of how, you know, I was like 24 when I started, and, you know, there was a lot of like mid-20s drama in my life. And every morning I'd knock on his door at 7 a.m. and be like, "Oh my God, you're never going to believe what this guy did last night." And then he texted and we'd order breakfast, and he listened to my drama. And, you know, he's a busy guy. He had 2 kids, he had a newborn baby. But Vanessa had just had Layla. And, you know, he's just juggling all these things, and there's me with all my drama.
It's true. I remember that, but I loved it. It was like us checking in, and that's part of what's so great about being a family. But as far as like Ryan and Annie, you're right. I think the fans were a little slow to warm up to us because of the whole Greenlee thing. But I remember the one scene. I remember one scene in particular that I think kind of changed everything. We were in a barn,
Oh, yeah.
and we were in the hay, and we were having sex in the barn in the hay,
Oh,
and you had these like knee-high boots on, and you left your boots on, and from that point on, so we had this great sex scene in the barn in the hay with her boots on, and she had the nickname Boots after that. And I think after, maybe it's just in my mind, but after that it went a lot better.
You're right. Boots.
Right?
Yeah. And wasn't your nickname Snaps? Because all of your shirts
My
had
nickname
Snaps.
Yes, that's the truth. My nickname was Snaps.
So Rebecca, Josh, and Cameron, let's talk about the two great loves of Greenlee's life, Leo and Ryan. Do you all remember the first time you met and figuring out the dynamic and how it was all going to really work and come to life?
I just remember having like sort of an instant chemistry with Josh and with Cameron, both of them. I just remember having a really easy time of it with both of them.
that's understandable.
Yeah, to this day, Rebecca's been one of the easiest to work with that I've ever worked with. Seriously, we had like this thing that just happened right away that made it very easy for me to get comfortable quickly because I was so green when I first got there. That
You're so like, natural.
I knew that I was on this show and it was a big deal, and I knew that people were watching, and I was on TV, and I couldn't get out of my own head. And thanks to Rebecca and Cameron, really, for making me feel really comfortable those first 3 years I was there.
Well, at the end of those 3 years, Josh, let's talk about the way Leo left. There was never a body found.
No.
But you did make that brief appearance years later in a dream. So what do you think? Did Leo live?
Yeah, Leo lived. Didn't he go floating down the stream with like one hand out of the water? I like to believe that he lived, but who knows? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time somebody came back from the dead.
Well, Josh and Annette mentioned that dream segment. You encourage Greenlee to find happiness with Ryan, and we know that they did end up together. But here's what I want to know: if you guys wrote the scripts, who would have been on Team Leo and who would have been Team Ryan?
Well, let me take that really quickly. I got to say that the truth is that Rebecca and I always said that her true love was Leo, and Ryan's true love was this character Jillian from back in the day. And I think if you have to write it, it pains me to say it, Josh. I'm not going to lie to you.
Not to take anything away from what I have with Cameron, because I really cherish that as well. Because we were together a long time, but I do think I think they thought the show was going to go on, and so they didn't wrap things up the way they would have, I think, had they realized that the show wasn't really going to go on. It went on to the internet or something like that. And so I always thought it would have been nice, like if Leo and Greenlee sort of went off like in the sunset, like he was alive and it wasn't a dream, and and then also like bring Jillian back or something, but.
Well, Cameron, Ryan, of course, got to have the relationships with Greenlee and Annie, but he also had one with Erica Kane, the great Susan Lucci. That storyline, that relationship made some headlines. She got called a cougar and all that. So what was it like for you living in the midst of that story and plot?
I loved it. I thought it was a great storyline. I mean, you always see, typically anyway, the older man and the younger woman, and they wrote it, and I thought it was fantastic, and I was all about it. It turns out it was like me and like 4 people that watched the show that enjoyed it. But other than that, it wasn't really all that popular.
Missy, we talked to Billy Miller, who told us you had a lot of fun when Annie killed Richie. What do you remember about that day?
Billy and I had gotten really close. He's so talented. And he was only there for a year, but then went off to star on Young and Restless for a long time. So he did great. But, he always jokes that I played his older sister, and then I joke that I killed him on TV. So that's like the little trade-off, even though, because he's older than me in real life. But yeah, it was fun. I was sad because I was sad that he was leaving. But it's always fun to kill somebody. And then that whole on TV, sorry, let me be clear.
Disclaimer.
On a soap opera. But that was like the start of them making my character pretty bonkers. So I was excited about that too. They were kind of taking the character in a new direction, which was exciting. So
yeah, she made a few trips to Oak Haven, which a lot of other notable names called home over the years. What can you tell us about your time Pine Valley's most famous mental hospital?
You know, I love the storyline because it's so fun to play crazy, but it's very, I remember it was like months and months and months. It's kind of isolating because I was only working with Aiden at the time. We were like talking to each other through a wall, and like the crazy doctor. So, you know, you're so used to seeing all your cast members and doing group scenes or dinners. And I loved that story, but it was like isolating because I like missed seeing all my friends at work. Like you're kind of alone in those scenes for like months. Yeah. So, but it was fun.
Chrishell, Amanda tried so hard to do the right thing over the years, made some mistakes along the way, but she definitely tried. So what were some of your favorite Amanda oops moments, if we want to call them that you wish you could have given her advice on?
Well, I think the reason why I love playing her is because it was one of those things where, like if you're watching a scary movie and the girl runs upstairs and you're yelling at the TV, like she was doing all the things that it's like you can understand why she was doing it, but they were all the wrong choices. So I think my favorite ones that she did would have to be, it's terrible to say, you know, you wouldn't do this in real life, of course, but JR was such a jerk so many times, and she got to not only like get him off of the wagon, but she gave him a healthy kick off of the wagon. I'm sorry, my dog is barking.
Oh, you're fine.
Sorry. I loved the storyline when I got to work at Fusion and Susan was my boss, and it was just one of those iconic moments. Like I always wanted to be on a soap, and all of a sudden here I am getting slapped by Susan Lucci. I mean, to this day, that was like, if I do nothing else ever again, I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah. The pairing of Jake and Amanda, that definitely connected with fans. Tell me about your pairing and making that connection.
I just think there was an easy chemistry with Ricky because there's a wild factor. There's a wild card. Like you don't 100% know what he's going to say. And that loosened me up because I really just had to be alive in every scene and just ready for anything. And that adds an element. So personally, that's why I really think that we connected, because every scene was really alive. And that's attributed to what he brings to the scenes for me.
It's very sweet. Thank you, my love. Thank you. I'll tell you for me, when I got there, what Chrishell is really saying is I don't know my lines. I didn't know what I was. And even if I think, you know, and Rebecca would save me too, so many times. So Chrishell would save me all the time. And just also her spirit when I got to the show. She has such anybody who knows her, a very loving spirit. And so a generous actor. And for me, I just remember being saved a million times by her on the dot. She's like, I think what you're thinking is this, and what you want to say. I'm like, yeah, exactly. But just kind. That's what I remember the most about Chrishell when we started. Really kind.
Of course, not all of the relationships extend beyond you know, a lot of these marriages and stuff. Rebecca, I want to talk about Greenlee and Kendall because they certainly had such a strong bond, even though there was some drama you know, along the way. But they were you know, they were definitely best friends. What was it like working with Alicia, and what did that friendship mean to you and the character?
Alicia just brings out some weird part of me that I just, whenever we were in scenes, I just always wanted to like do something to like mess her up or make her laugh or do something. So it was amazing to work with her. We're similar in a lot of ways and we're different in a lot of ways. And I think it just really worked out. We had a great chemistry at work, you know, on set. And then we also, in our real lives, and I talked to her yesterday, so we talk all the time. It was just really incredible to work with her. And the only scene that stands out a lot to me is like, we had this cat fight. We've always had cat fights and those were always fun. And we would be laughing so hard that you couldn't tell that we were laughing. I would be crying, laughing, trying to hide myself in her shoulder.
Everybody could tell.
Yeah, well, oh, stop. She had to kiss me once in front of Susan Lucci and drop me on the ground. And we look up and Susan's still acting like, and we're dying, laughing. Because she like throws me back to kiss me and falls on top of me. And like, we look up and Susan's just still there for her tag shot, just like acting. We're like growing.
Perfect.
That's basically still our relationship. We laugh about the dumbest things.
Hey, speaking of falling on your head, do you remember when I dropped you on your head?
I do.
Do you still have a hole in your head from that?
No, I always think I do still have neck problems though from it.
You got to tell that story. You got to tell that story.
Josh hates it, but it's funny, Josh. After I had Charlotte, I had postpartum depression and anxiety, and both of them, and so that didn't help matters. But like, she would hit her head, and I would just be like, ah! And she did once, and I
get it.
But anyway, Josh was we were doing a scene and we were rehearsing. And do you want to hear this story?
I don't remember how.
Yeah, you got it.
Yes. You don't remember?
I was watching it. You got to.
Oh my God! Wait, Pete, you're part of the story, Cameron. So
no.
We're doing this scene. We're rehearsing it, and I'm in a robe, and he picks me up, and so we're chest to chest, and I have my legs wrapped around him, and he's supposed to take me back to the bedroom to like make love, right? And it's a rehearsal. And so at the end, Josh looks at me and goes, let's go have sex. And he goes running to the back bedroom to throw me on the bed, and he trips. And then he tripped on a wire. And in tripping on a wire, he instinctively, like put his hands out. And
dropped her. Oh my God.
And my back went on the floor.
Oh.
And these beds, the bed frames were like just like slabs of wood underneath the mattress. So my head goes like this, like
God.
this.
On the corner of one of them.
In the corner of the bed frame. So I looked at him and I go, why did you just drop me on the ground? I could barely breathe. And I look up and Josh goes, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I'm okay. No, wait, I'm not okay. There's a dent in my head. There's a dent in my head. Like there shouldn't be a dent in my head. No, and I lean over the bed and and I'm bleeding everywhere.
Oh my God.
Oh my Lord.
And I look up and Josh looks like mortified and like terrified. And I look up and I go, it's going to scab, right? Like it's going to scab. I don't need to go to the doctor, right?
And they're like, came in, they put you on a stretcher. You were getting carried out by the ambulance.
And I have this neck brace on, and I can see all the lights and everything.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, I'm just like this. And Cameron leans over and he goes, "Peanut." I'm like,
Peanut. That's right.
Oh God, that was terrible.
If each of you can take me kind of quickly into your last days or your last day on the show.
I just remember the big gun. Remember the big gunfight thing that we did? They built that big like cliff bridge thing. So it was like my mom was trying to kill Greenlee, and I tried to stop my mom from doing it. And I think I ended up. We both fall into the river? I forget.
No,
it was just
I fell off the edge and was hanging on the edge.
Yeah.
Like hanging by a limb for
saving Greenlee,
hours.
Being the hero that I am.
I mean, that last day, I remember the last day we were all together, and I just remember that family feeling and just kind of being like, wow, this is over.
Yeah, I had left the show about 2 months before it was announced that it was ending. I remember being at the nail salon and getting a text from Chrishell actually. About the cancellation. My particular last day I was working with Cammie and Jacob, and I got shipped back to the mental institution. So I remember that. And it was a great last day, and it was a great story. But yeah, I wasn't there like the end last day, but I of course was so sad to hear it, because those 4.5 years changed my life and were the best. So
I was outside having lunch at the studio. And and Susan came out, and Susan came out, and I just remember she was in shock, and I thought, what's going on? And I just remember thinking, that's our queen, right? The queen of daytime. She was very, very upset, and all I could think about is Susan. I wasn't thinking about myself. I thought, this is crazy, because she's been Erica Kane forever. Now, what is Erica gonna do? Like, what's gonna happen? And the way that it was, that's all I remember. The rest is Chrishell could probably help me remember, because she always helped me remember everything. It was very foggy. It wasn't cool. Yeah.
They had actually written, because the lady who played my mom could only come in a certain amount of time. So we actually shot a proper ending before Prospect Park bought the rights. And we shot this ending where we'd adopted another child, and And they wrote this beautiful ending for everyone, but we actually shot ours, and then it got scrapped once Prospect Park bought the rights because they wanted to leave it open-ended. So it was a little unfortunate because I know what it was supposed to look like, the ending. And it was Jake and Amanda, they have Trevor, they adopted another baby because she couldn't have kids.
I remember that now. That's right.
Yeah, and every single character really had a beautiful storyline, but obviously if they did that, then it wouldn't be open-ended. So it was a little unfortunate because I read that script, so I know how it was supposed to go. So I always, in my head, I like to think of it the way that it was written originally, the ending.
I also remember when we got the news, I wanted to leave a little bit early, wanted to sneak out and probably go play golf or something. And I went to see our executive producer, and I just said, is it cool if I slide out? Because I know we have this like a group meeting later. And I remember the look in her eyes, and she said, no, you got to stick around. And I was like, wow. And then we all were down there, and Brian Franz, who was the president of ABC Daytime at the time, delivered the news. And that was like very surreal.
Can we all come back and do like a limited 10 episode series of show?
Yeah, that'd be
fun. But I think that's a great idea. I think if fans would be totally into like something limited or a primetime reboot, something like that.
Yeah, why not?
Small.
Let's write it and produce it, everybody. Come on, let's do it. Get it out there.
Well, last question for all of you, and something maybe you've thought about over the years. What is the legacy of All My Children?
What comes the first word that came to mind, I'm just going to say it, is family. There was just such a beautiful family kind of thread I guess that's sort of the case with all soaps, but I just feel like All My Children really did have beautiful family connections. And then the other thing that comes to mind is Susan Lucci.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Agnes Nixon. Too. For me, it's like people will always talk about how they watched it with their mother or their grandmother or something. So there is something about these shows that will connect people to their loved ones, I think, for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just was such a special, I mean, you've heard this before, I'm sure, but it was such a special group. Like everyone
really was.
Here's done other shows, obviously, and films or whatever everyone's done since. It was such a unique, special group of people way before I was there too. It was just a really special group of actors and human beings,
As somebody who didn't grow up watching it, I still knew of it, and it did have this rich sort of history about it. I think it's people like David Canary, like Susan Lucci, that made this show stand out and why people still remember it in a lot of ways. And it was one of the good ones.
I just think with the landscape changing so much in media that I always thought you got to be careful. You take a show like a legacy show like this off the air that's been on for so long, and I know it's a shrinking world, and it's there's not enough bandwidth for everything. But and even if I wasn't, none of us were on it, I would still be thinking of the Susans of the world, having a place in our television history. And I really wish it was still on for all the new players and all the new cast members, because I had a really full life at that show. Like it was a really an amazing experience. And I really do think that, network television has to be careful when there's only a couple left. The audience that loves these shows are your, I didn't call them fans. They were friends and family. They were an extension of the show. And you felt it every time any of us would go and do appearances, and it's a shame that part is gone.
Yeah, and also to add to that, like you said, for young actors like myself and anybody who came on at the time, it was such a great opportunity as a young actor, because there's very few places where you get a chance to work like that every single day. You learn, where your lights are, where, you have to learn all these lines. You learn about how to handle media in some way. It's like a boot camp in some ways, and you really, really have to commit. And I think that it was, for me as a young actor at the time, there was no better place for me to learn.
I 100% agree with that. And then the sentiment, since I've, gone on and done, I never had the sense of family like I had since All My Children. So since that was my first job, I think I thought that's how every job was. And I since learned, nothing against the other jobs. It's just that people are, they're older, they have families, they have everything going on. And something about this show maybe because it was in New York and it were so many people coming into New York for the show, so we became our own family. It's not like a lot of us had extended family there. So we all really truly became our own family. At least that was my experience. And so now working on other shows since, you drive to work and you go home and you still can have your friendships, but it's a little different. Like we work together all day long and then it's like, okay, well, what are you doing later? So I just feel like that is a special part of the show that will always be attached to it, that I will just be so happy that I have that.
Well, that sounds like a great place to end this and wrap it up. You guys, thank you all so much. This was fantastic, and we really can't thank you enough for taking some time today to spend with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Fun.
thanks for arranging this.
Yeah, good to see all you guys.